Alright. So basically Act 3 walked, so Act 4 could run. I finished Act 4 and really liked it. It plays well off the rather slow setup in Act 3, resolving some plot points and also setting up for what's likely going to be a massive storm in 4.2, the finale of this Archon quest. This act's title is called Cataclysm's Quickening, but also the plot was quickening with all the cool and badass moments the characters were getting. There's a good amount of stuff to talk about, so let's go. So picking up from the previous act, we start off trying to listen in on gossip for more clues. Quistot and Lavrune, the bombshell bros, introduce the idea of Overworld versus Underworld, which compares the different lives between people living above in the city versus the convicts down here in the fortress. This adds more depth to the fortress because it serves to emphasize that once someone is convicted, it's super hard to ever go back to the overworld. And so people begin developing negative views of the overworld and would even be okay with the prophecy being fulfilled, because it would mean a fresh start. I think this is pretty realistic of how people would feel, in the real world, and Hoyoverse has touched more on it in Honkai Star Rail with the Bellabog quest. I have a video on it if you're interested in watching that. So I'm glad that the story here introduces it but doesn't go in depth about it, because I think that we have enough to piece together how different the two worlds are. As it turns out, the Bombshell Bros will turn out to be some of my MVPs, as we later find out. They even tell us to look out for two people who frequent the Infirmary, Jeru and Lorvine, as they likely know more information about the secrets here. Traveler fakes getting sick as an excuse to enter the Infirmary, where they deduce that there are hidden things here. Sigewinne takes care of us, and I like that she is onto her act because she established that Melusines are able to tell when humans are exhausted, so she could easily tell when Traveler was faking certain injuries. I think the story writes her character well. It's really cute when she says she likes playing dumb just to feel trusted. Also, she's ready to tranquilize any threats to the fortress, so you can't mess with her, even if you're Fatui. So with all the information we've gathered, we let Lyney know, and Lynette infiltrates the Infirmary, and Freminet has gone to the pipes to try to trace where Childe went. We try to meet up with Lynette, only to find out that Wriothesley has been onto everyone and has foiled Lynette's plans, capturing Lynette, and Freminet is nowhere to be seen. The confrontation we have between Lyney and Wriothesley is probably my favorite scene in this act, from a storytelling perspective. Since we're being portrayed as the protagonists, Wriothesley is being shown as the antagonist, but I love the irony here because genuinely, Lyney's party is in the wrong, and he's not yet mature enough to see it. Wriothesley has done nothing wrong, he's simply just doing his job of maintaining order in the fortress. Lyney and the Fatui infiltrated the fortress without permission, and so from the fortress's point of view, catching the Fatui is the right thing for Wriothesley to do. While we understand that Lyney's upset that his siblings were caught, he should understand that it's the risk that they took when accepting their mission. So I love how the story here presents Lyney's party as the good guys, when really, this is just the consequences of their actions. So I think this scene highlights one of Lyney's weaknesses really well, and highlights Wriothesley as being a very reasonable and respected character. Everything Wriothesley said makes sense too. I like his character here. He caught Lynette, saying he can return her in exchange for Lyney to invite Arlecchino to come to the fortress, where he wants to chat with her. This is a very reasonable request, and such an easy task too. In fact, in Act 3, Arlecchino literally requested Furina and Neuvillette to let her visit the fortress, so Wriothesley's request is a win-win for both parties. But again, because of Lyney's pride, he doesn't see the rationale here. Paimon and Traveler also seem to be on Lyney's side, trying to reason with Wriothesley, but I was like, no Paimon, no Traveler. Y'all know Wriothesley's in the right here. Let him cook. Common Wriothesley dub. Typical Lyney L. Alright, sorry. No offense, I'm not criticizing Lyney here. I'm praising how the story highlighted his weaknesses, which is a good thing because it means he'll have room to grow as a character. Luckily for Lyney, I was rational enough to use all the information and clues I gathered to answer Wriothesley's 3 questions correctly, so he lets Lynette and Freminet go. Also, Clorinde makes a surprise appearance, doing what she typically does and saving a prominent character from a bad situation. First it was Navia, and now it's Freminet, who had a predicament with Primordial Seawater showing up in the surrounding seawater. I thought it was kind of funny that after all the mentions of Freminet, this is the first time we see him again, in a state where he's just out of it. I was like, why didn't the game just give us a glimpse of his character model doing something in the fortress earlier? Like, they waited until all the House of Hearth siblings took Ls before showing him. I do think that the flashback showing him trailing Childe did a great job of showing the threat of the Primordial Seawater. I felt tension when Freminet was desperately trying to escape the water, only being alive due to Clorinde saving him in the nick of time. And this information brings Primordial Seawater back into the narrative. Previously, we didn't have any idea where Primordial Seawater was being brought from, but now it all makes sense how the serial disappearances were happening, because the source of the water is literally right under the fortress. It's close to the city in Fontaine. Wriothesley shows us the Forbidden Zone, how it contains a sluice gate that acts as a barrier for the Primordial Sea underneath it, as well as monitoring the Primordial Seawater levels. It looks like the previous Hydro Archon, Egeria, helped maintain the fortress in order to combat the Primordial Sea. I don't exactly know why the sea level started rising recently, but I feel that Egeria predicted this would happen someday, and left it to Furina to figure out how to handle it. Also, Wriothesley has been making a giant boat, inspired by the previous Remirian kingdom, so that's really cool. I hope it gets used to fly the fortress's people out whenever the Primordial Seawater destroys this fortress. So we've pretty much learned most of the secrets and history of the fortress, so the main last scene here is that the Primordial Seawater does overflow, resulting in an evacuation. And this is where my homies, the Bombshell Bros, come in, since they delay their own evacuation to find us to let us know to get to safety. So I'm like, these guys are MVPs. The other MVPs are Wriothesley and Clorinde, who get some badass scenes to delay the seawater from flooding the fortress. When Wriothesley froze some of the seawater, it reminded me of when Shunha froze the tsunami attack from Beisht. So hey, if the fortress ever wants more backup, just hit up Shunha. Neuvillette also shows up to fully mitigate the seawater and apologizes for the sentence being too severe. I don't know exactly what or whom he's apologizing to here, but it sounded like he was talking to someone he knew. It might be a stretch, but it felt like Neuvillette was adding more years to someone he's already given many years of punishment to. So it makes me wonder if there's some sentient being that's responsible for the Primordial Seawater. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room, the tea party between Arlecchino and Furina. The tea party where Neuvillette desperately wanted us to be present there to protect Furina from potential harm from Arlecchino. And I knew it. Arlecchino doesn't care about Childe, he's just an agenda item for her goals. So Arlecchino's beef with Furina is that she feels Furina, the supposed Hydro Archon, hasn't done anything to stop the prophecy, and gets more fed up with each passing day with the prophecy becoming more and more real. Meanwhile, Furina, as hinted by Neuvillette, has actually been hard at work trying to stop the prophecy, so for the first time, she actually fights back against Arlecchino. She won't stand being verbally attacked for inaction when she's been tackling this problem, likely ever since she first took on the role of an Archon. I think that both Arlecchino and Furina are valid in their feelings here. With the impending doomsday, I think it makes sense for someone to ask what their god is doing to help, since an Archon is supposed to protect their nation. But I feel Arlecchino is going about this the wrong way, and it's likely because she just has ulterior motives. As we know, since she's a harbinger, she wants the hydronosis, but even if we just focus on her desire to save Fontaine, she can still go about it better. The simplest reason is that if she was only for saving Fontaine, Arlecchino should offer to help Furina in stopping the prophecy, instead of berating her for doing supposedly nothing to stop it. They share the same goal of saving Fontaine, so if there weren't ulterior motives, Arlecchino should be offering help to Furina. Like, why does Arlecchino offer to work with us, but not Furina? And while I think Arlecchino's criticism of Furina is very valid, I do believe that Furina has been actively trying to resolve the prophecy. Not just because Neuvillette hinted at this, but also because it makes sense with Furina's character. Furina wants her people to see just the entertainment side of things and keeps the darker things away from the spotlight. It's clear she puts up the facade of entertainment so that her people don't have to worry about the prophecy, and she doesn't want others to be involved in trying to fix it. So I can only imagine how much pressure and burden she's put onto herself. So of course she reacts the way she does to Arlecchino. What does Arlecchino know of the hardships Furina has put herself through? What does anyone know about what Furina has gone through? Of course, we need more information on both of these characters, and I'm sure the story is saving it for the next few acts. And also Furina's gonna be released in the next update anyways. So the next act will conclude Fontaine's story. I really liked this scene, especially with where Furina's character arc is going. As for whether or not she's the Hydro Archon, I mean, I think she is. She's just taking on all the burdens by herself, which I think is something an Archon would do, but not necessarily something that they should do. Ah yes, Neuvillette is the Hydro Dragon. Well, we saw that one coming. But he does clarify that he's not the original Sovereign, but rather like a successor, and is slowly regaining memories of the original Sovereign. The Primordial one had stolen some of the dragon's powers and used it as the baseline for the Archon's powers. So if the living Sovereigns ever got their elemental authorities back, they'd definitely wreck the Archons, and would likely be a huge threat again to Celestia. This part also makes me wonder what would happen if an Archon combined their powers with their respective Sovereign. Would that work? So instead of Archons disappearing for Sovereigns to get their authority back, what if, for example, Furina and Neuvillette combine their powers so that they would have enough power to say, stop the Primordial Sea together, since it seems clear that neither can stop the prophecy by themselves. So yeah, that pretty much concludes the quest. I'm really excited for the next acts. No one really cared about Childe this act, but he's gonna be involved in a big role next time, so my boy's gonna get some nice spotlight. I was pretty impressed with everyone's character in this act. Made it really enjoyable to play through it. We're pretty much well set up for the endgame of Fontaine, so yeah, let's see what happens in update 4.2. Thank you for watching this video, and catch you in the next one. Till next time, ciao. Oh shoot.
You shouldn't see me like
Oh my gosh. Sigewinne, help me.
Take me if you want, but let them go.
how touching. Can you just give me one more minute?
Bro, true. Bro, Lyney's like, and partly Traveler and Paimon, they're just not reading the room.
I suppose. Actually, do you have a towel? I would like to dry my hair.
Girl, it looks perfectly dry and beautiful to me. But okay, we'll get you a towel.